Okay. So once again, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Burak Sayın. I'm the founder of Spacetime Works, a research and development company based in Malmö, Sweden, working to create more space for culture and the arts. And I'm also we are also the member of Culture Action Europe, and that's actually why essentially we are here today. And so we are organizing this webinar, placing culture in the heart of sustainable development in the context of Nordic Hub. It is organized by Culture Action Europe's Nordic Hub, and it is within the framework of School of Advocacy. That is a project funded by Nordic Culture Point. So with this project, we aim to strengthen the Nordic cultural sector's voice. And towards that aim, we are building the capacities of cultural institutions, professionals, and other related actors. Hence, we are here today organizing this webinar. I will give the floor in a second to Johan Flo. But before we do that, I have a few housekeeping rules. Please keep your mics muted, and try to write your name fully in the Zoom setting. And other than that, if you have questions later, we will have a question round. And on that note, I'm now giving the mic and the floor to Johan Floch. Please, Johan, take it over.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Burak, and also for the invitation to facilitate this conversation. Hello, everybody. My name is Johan Flock, and I work for On the Move, the international information network dedicated to artistic and cultural mobility. So it's a great pleasure to have this conversation with you this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you are based. For participants with visual impairment, I'm going to self-describe very quickly. I'm a white man in my 40s with brown, long graying hair, and I have facial hair, and I'm wearing reading glasses today to be able to read my notes. And of course, I will ask my panelist to do the same exercise for you. I'm gonna maybe just let you know that we are in a Zoom meeting mode, which means that you will be invited to actually interact with our panelists today, and share your comments, ask them questions, and I will make sure we have time to do that. But maybe just to introduce quite briefly the conversation itself, I will say this: we will try to focus on a campaign that has been quite long and quite full of efforts and hopes, I would say, dedicated to putting culture on the international map, in the international framework, and more specifically to have culture as a standalone sustainable development goals. So we are going to talk about that campaign, which I think makes sense in terms of the project that Burak mentioned, the School of Advocacy. I think we can learn a lot actually from this advocacy campaign that took place for over 10 years now. I would say it started already probably in 2013, 2015. And we have chance to have two persons that are very closely related to this campaign, so they can later on share their insights or their concerns, but also their joys and challenges in traveling on that road. We want to explore how culture is can be more structurally embedded in sustainable development strategies, policies and practices, and we will have a Nordic perspective, as we feel it could be interesting to hear from two esteemed colleagues on their impression on what they feel is important at the moment, what's cooking in the Nordic countries, but also what the role and place of culture is today in this area, in this world region, and how they are actually using maybe all the advocacy that has been done, and the conversation around culture as a sustainable development goal in their work, in their practice, and in their environment. Um, I mean, I'm sure most of you know that the Culture 2030 Goal campaign was a joint effort by many international organizations, including Culture Action Europe, UCLG, IFACA, and many others. And the idea was to, and we will hear from panelists, but the idea was really to, in a way, make it obvious, make it explicit that the role of culture is a driver, is an enabler of sustainability. So the idea is, in a way, of this campaign was to make it explicit, but also to build a framework and make sure that national governments are committing to build, in a way, a society where culture has a full place and role and can quite heavily contribute to the sustainable development of our societies. It felt a few years ago during the UNESCO World Conference on Cult Policies and Sustainable Development, what we call Mondiacult. It felt that the Mondiacult in Mexico in 2022 was some sort of milestone for this conversation, and that the call for a standalone culture goal gained significant momentum. I would put it this way. But then, very recently, a few months ago, we had another Mondiacult edition, this time in Barcelona. And again, it felt like this idea of reaffirming the role of culture in the global public as a public good, as a human right, was also very strongly, presented, and it was part of the final declaration, etc., etc. So it feels, from the outside at least, that this conversation has been gaining momentum, is present, has been debated at the international level, that many governments are somehow committed and see the value of creating a standalone sustainable development goal. We also feel that there is a strong shift, I would say, in international conversation around say the international framework, its validity sometimes or its relevance. So this is also something that we can talk about. So I hope I already planted a couple of ideas that you that you want to pick and unpack or unfold and develop. So today, for this conversation, we have four dear colleagues. I will start with Ivona. Ivona Price is based in Stockholm, and she's the director of Intercult. Intercult is operating the Europe Direct Information Center, but Ivona is also leading the Smart Sweden, the platform who is supporting the management of creative freelancers in Sweden. And of course, she's been in countless EU projects, Creative Europe projects, Erasmus Plus, Horizon, etc., etc. So, Ivona, thank you for joining us this morning. We also have Lars, the Secretary General of Culture Action Europe. Lars, you are going to share your experience, the kitchen conversation around the campaign. And since you were also in Mondiacult in Barcelona a few months ago, I think you have also some feedback you can share with us on about this journey and the conversation itself. We also have Rosa Merilainen, the Secretary General of Kulta. Rosa is based in Helsinki, Finland. She's been a lobbyist for the cultural sector for many years. She's working for Kulta, who is an umbrella organization for many Finnish cultural arts and cultural organization associations. And she's also a co-founder of the feminist think tank Atu. And I hope I'm saying that right. So I'm looking forward to hear also from you, Rosa. And last but not least, we have Jordi Pasquale with us. Jordi is the coordinator of the Committee on Culture of the World Organization UCLG, the United Cities and Local Governments. And the work of the committee is based on the Culture 21 actions. And I think many people are familiar with the cultural rights based toolkit on culture in sustainable cities. The committee organized global awards. The Biennale Summit has a database of good practices. And the UCLG has been the coordinator of this global campaign, the culture co-coordinator, let's say, of the Culture 2030 goal campaign. So maybe actually I will start with you, Jordi, to ask my first question, and to ask you, what is your general feeling of where we are now? And don't hesitate to go back to my very quick and somehow caricatural presentation about this journey, but um, what do you feel happened in Mondiacult Mexico? What do you feel happened in Mondiacult Barcelona? How would you describe this journey for you?
Uh, Thank you very much, Johan. Uh, this is Jordi Pasqual, uh, in my 50s, with curly hair becoming gray, uh, and wearing glasses, blue glasses, thin blue glasses. It was not caricatural. It was very complete, Johan. Let me go back to 2013. Uh, as a footnote, is it okay that I devote, say, 5 minutes to answer your question? 4 or 5
Sure,
minutes?
sure, definitely.
In 2013, when the conversations to shape the post 2015, now the Agenda 2030, the results of the deliberation of member states, UN member states in June 2013 was culture is not globable and not goalable, which was a huge disappointment of all, beginning the UN system, because it's after the 1972 UNESCO Convention on Heritage, more than 50 years after, you dare to say, 40 years, you dare to say culture is not global and not goalable. Oh my God, in what goal are you living? So the month before, UNESCO and some global networks, uh, not yet the campaign, but the seat of the campaign, had written and successfully achieved that the Hangzhou UNESCO Declaration finished with the paragraph, a culture goal is the best way to share uh, a global discussion on elements that are common to humanity: heritage, creativity, diversity, and transmission of knowledge. These four. Month later, reality, principle, not not global, not goalable. And we thought in our children and grandchildren, and we said to ourselves, well, we know this is not true. Let's write a draft document how a culture goal could be. So this document was published in September 2013. The evolution of the discussion was obvious in the months between 2013 and the adoption of the 2030 agenda in September 2015. Tiny mentions of culture in, you all know, 11.4, 8.3, 8.7, 4.7, etc. Then Mondiacult 2022. Yes, in Mexico City, there is a paragraph stating, asking the Secretary General of the UN to work towards a standalone goal in the post 2030. Let me say, this was the result of somehow the advocacy of the Culture 2030 goal campaign, which in February that year publicly published, also communicated to UNESCO, we are going to publish a document on the culture goal. Either you are referring to this proposal or not to in the final declaration of Mondiacult, it's not our responsibility. But in this moment of history, having lived the difficulties in the localization of the Agenda 2030, partly because of the lack of consideration of culture, having analyzed the growing number of member states that are concerned by this absence, considering the tens and tens of cities and local governments that, under their own initiative, they added a cultural consideration in the local implementation of the Agenda 2030. Listening to the academy, we said to ourselves, yes, it's very early. It is not 2 years before the beginning of the negotiations. It's 2022. Negotiations will begin in 2027. But yes, let's go in that direction. And UNESCO, I would like to think they heard our advocacy, and that paragraph was kept. Similar thing between, say, January 2025 and September 25. Here with a tiny difference, because there are clear national champions in favor of the culture goal. India, Mexico, Brazil, Italy, South Africa, not minor things, but also resistance, skepticism, some countries saying it is too early to begin this conversation. And we know what it means. This means we are against. Saying too early means probably, oh, now it's too late. Well, in order to decrease the power of this narrative to be imposed, it's too early, it is too complex, it is too difficult, we have no data. In September 2025, the campaign published this document, The Culture Goal from Necessity to Reality, with the 10 targets, the ones we published in September 2022, and many indicators that are already in place in the UNESCO Statistics Institute, in the UNESCO Culture 2030 indicators, data that is managed by global networks, ICOMOS, IFLA, ICOM, etc. To prove this is already happening. It's almost there. It only needs the political leadership of the key countries to say, yes, this will complete the agenda post 2030. There is a critical mass of actors that are in favor. Let's make it happen. So I think that this is where we are. I could be, say, another perhaps moment a bit more critical, but I think that this is where we are.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I think it's very informative also to see the journey and to realize, the amount of effort it takes just to have a quick paragraph in a way somewhere. And this is the school of advocacy for us. Maybe last, I will ask you also to reflect on this journey, and especially on the 2025 Mondiacult experience. Where do you think we are now with this campaign and with this journey.
Thank you, Johan, and thanks, Jordi, for sketching the bigger journey, because I've only been part of that journey in the last 3 years, which was an exciting and rewarding part of the journey already. But I guess my perspective on it is very much a EU-based perspective, because that's what. Sorry, I wanted to introduce myself. I'm so sorry. So Lars speaking from Culture Action Europe, and I too, just like Jordi, have curly hair. I am a 50-year-old middle-aged man, so there's a little trend emerging here. And I have a little mustache, which is just temporary, my temporary weakness to fashion trends. And I'm wearing a pink jacket, not because it's the corporate color of Culture Action Europe, but because I enjoy colors. Back to the journey. So what I've learned in the last 3 years, being in the heart of advocacy for the cultural sectors in Europe, in Brussels, is that we sorely need a global perspective, and that the global perspective is at the same time what kind of brings other problems with it. Europe is not isolated in the world. It is a part of the world, and it could be isolated in a very unsustainable way if we look at what's happening in the world at the moment. So there's a full commitment from Culture Action Europe, and I guess most of our members, to a global perspective and to enter into that conversation. At the same time, we have an internal conversation where we ask ourselves where cultural policies come from and how advocacy works, and are we still using the right instruments? And if we look at where cultural policy as a framework of thinking comes from, then the UNESCO played a distinctive role after the war to coin the term cultural policy, because in a globalizing world there was a fear that we would lose local cultural identities. So in a way we are trying to break that very national perspective with a global perspective, using policy tools that kind of emerge from that national perspective, which is a very weird circle of thinking, to be honest. But we see in how much that is also reflected in EU cultural policies. The EU has a very limited competence. We think it has a very limited competence when it comes to culture. It's only about transnational mobility, transnational cooperation, minimum 3 countries, maybe kind of also the cultural capitals chapter, but that's about it. There's not much more. So in a way, we've tried for many years to circumvent the problem somehow by investing heavily on mainstreaming culture into other policy areas. And in a way, we have been, again, successful there and have been shooting in our own foot, so to speak, because we've showed, I don't know, what culture does for health and well-being, just as one example. So it's a very, we've got a very successful advocacy history there. At the same time, have we become stronger as a sector? No, we haven't. We are still in as precarious situation as we have been. So in a way, the culture goal gives us in Europe a sort of blueprint how we could think of, yes, putting a mainstreaming aspect in it and say, okay, culture contributes to all the other 17 Sustainable Development Goals, but we need our own one in order to enable that mainstreaming, that vectorial approach. So with that perspective, being at Mondiacult felt also a little bit weird, because I think on the one hand, I liked very much, and I found it a profoundly strong moment when we proposed the culture goal, the 1.0 culture goal document that Jordi referred to, to a full audience with full support, and also again with very positive signs from UNESCO, and with a local host, the Spanish ministry that had just launched a cultural rights plan, which is really the playing field in which we feel we belong. and at the same time, you listen to political conversations with, I don't know, Russia involved or absent US, the absent US, that makes you doubt whether the reality of our discussions is still no, I don't want to be cynical and say relevant to the situation in the world, but you get an uneasy feeling, at least, about our conversations. And I had to really recalibrate my thinking, and also internally had to have conversations with our board and our team about where we stand in the with not only with this campaign, but with our view on what culture can do in a world that is not only going from one urgency to the next, but in which we feel existentially threatened by the day. And for us, it is absolutely obvious that somehow we need to embrace this policy pragmatism, as I would call it, because what we have achieved now, what Jordi has described with the 10 targets and really an extensive list of indicators, is something that we might not realize in an SDG-based agenda, because the sustainability of the planet and humanity and our societies may be discussed in other contexts in the geopolitical climate at this moment. But it is ammunition for us to be ready in, when is it, September 2027, when the post-2030 agenda will be discussed, to have our arguments ready for whatever framework will come up then. So in a way, I'm not cynical. I just realized that somehow our discussion bubble, is somehow not totally in the frame of the global discussion anymore, and that frame is moving at rapid speed. But at the same time, I feel what we develop will be relevant, even if the form will be a different one. I keep it to that for the moment.
Yes, but I think thank you very much, Lars and Jordi, for this. The big picture, the history, and also for your perspective on what Mondiacult 2025 was. Also, I feel it was I was there and I felt the same way, that you feel somehow a sense of progress, because we know how international advocacy, I mean, the effort and the energy that needs to go to be able to progress, and the amount of states that are, reluctant or playing many games in these international, fora. And at the same time, we were there in a moment where the international context again was so full of urgencies, was shaken, we were pushed in all directions. So, in a way, it felt like also some sort of safe space. This Mondiacult felt like, okay, we are in a bubble, but it is a bubble where where we can find also comfort and strength in order to grow. And I have also the same feeling in terms of all this is not done in vain, to put it bluntly, as it feels many of the arguments, many of the shapes and the documents that were put together are fueling, in a way, giving the munitions, and this is an accurate term, giving the munitions to actually have other battles and in other fora, not only at international level, but also at European level or at a regional level. And maybe this is a good transition to turn to our two Nordic representatives, in a way, as it feels in this conversation and the resistance that Jordi was mentioning. We can have a map on where does the resistance to putting culture as to have a cultural goal in a way in the UN, SDGs. But we also have allies, and especially in the Nordic countries, there is a tradition of, pushing forward this agenda and making sure that the role of culture is being fully recognized. And maybe I will turn to Rosa and ask you, in your perspective, and since you have had also political responsibilities, how do you feel the Nordic region has been active or acting in putting this conversation in the political agenda? How do you feel the Nordic region is contributing and fueling, this campaign, this advocacy that we, civil society organization, are having?
I believe there's um, um, slightly it's changing, but let me first describe myself.
Yes.
I'm Rosa speaking. I'm a middle-aged white woman with eyeglasses and lipstick, and I'm constantly smiling, even though I don't know why. And yes, I think that for a few years, it I've seen many projects and actions in Nordic countries within the cultural field to be more like more ecological, more sustainable, to like the amount of festivals being carbon neutral, and this kind of ecological responsibility has been there like strongly within few years, and it's they are getting better all the time. So I think that our own nest is going to be better all the time, and it's always easier to talk about sustainable development if your own field of interest is kind of, you can see that, well, they're doing a nice job in the music field, in the museums, wherever they are really having this discussion and doing the changes. But even though we've been doing this kind of this campaign approximately the same time as Lars and Culture Action Europe for a few years, I can still see that the most of the people in are quite kind of they are curious that this kind of that idea of using culture as a driving force for this sustainable change, that sounds good. This is interesting. This sounds important. But I think there are a lot of people don't actually know yet what does it really mean. That like for example, we've been doing for 3 years kind of we have been discussing with youth sector, the development cooperation sector, and also the environmental administration and NGOs to like have pitches about culture as a driving force, and we can find it from many documents, and we are in many committees and panels right now. So it's kind of it's changing. But I think what we need right now, because I think in Nordic countries we always want to be quite practical to really kind of do it. So so now we've been trying heavily whole last year, and we are still trying to do it, to find those municipalities and cities which would be interested in trying to piloting those indicators Jordi has kind of introduced to us all. So kind of to learn there are actually indicators, and you could actually try it. And but it's a slow change, because in the most in all cities and municipalities where there are some people working for sustainable development, their background is in the ecological field. So they are interested in us, but still kind of trying to understand what's happening. And so we at the same time we are kind of we want to do the declarations and commitments and that kind of campaigning work for culture goal. We also try to find those local actors who are really really willing to not only do the ecological part of the sustainable development, but really introduce the culture in and show that it's a driving force.
Yeah, thank you, Rosa, for this. I feel it is interesting to see how the civil society, I mean, the cultural organization, the grassroots organization are also very active to carry the message everywhere and to try to translate sometimes big concepts around sustainability, working conditions, mainstreaming culture with other, sectors, etc. I mean, how the arts and culture is very, very agile in trying to embody the sustainable development and translate principles into very concrete actions on the ground. And sometimes the resistance comes from a lack of understanding from the political sphere. Sometimes politicians or administration institutions are not always prepared. But sometimes, and it's probably the case in the Nordic countries, some organizational institutions, grant givers, private or public, are also quite forward looking and try to be at the forefront of the sustainable development conversation. So maybe Ivona, I will ask you this question since you are also pretty much in touch with many funders in Sweden, and you have conversation with institutions that are not only shaping cultural policies, but also providing funds, trying to support the field. How do you see this, the sustainable development conversation has grown or not these past years in Sweden and in the Nordic countries? How do you feel this conversation is taking place in a way?
Thank you, Johan. So to introduce myself, my name is Ivona Price. I am a director of Intercult in Sweden, an organization working with international collaborations, mainly in the European Union, but also beyond the borders of the Union. I also manage the organization of SMART in Sweden, which is the European company working towards freelancers in the creative culture and creative sector. So yes, on everyday basis, we deal with organizations in Sweden, but also beyond, dealing with the everyday life of artists, dealing with the collaborations between artists and culture, smaller culture operators. And what I can say is that Lars mentioned that Europe is not isolated. I would like to say that, of course, the Nordics is not the isolated region, and Sweden is not the isolated country. And the local activities, in the municipalities, in the regions, are not isolated either. We are all part of the global cultural movement or cultural activities. Culture is most active, most alive locally, and of course most impactful in my experience globally. And that's why we are working with the European collaborations. And we find that the conversation about sustainability on the local level is very much alive. It's not as alive on the national level. And the national level is more like a silo, a bottleneck that we have to bypass when collaborating with reclaiming culture, with reclaiming the sustainable goals. Culture, using culture as a field of democratic imagination. So in our work, we see that the local is very much important. That's where the conversation is taking place about the sustainability as a challenge, because the sustainability, as we know, it's a technical, it can be a technical challenge, but it's also a cultural one, to stay sustainable. So that's where our organization is working together with others, with passing the knowledge, exchanging the experiences on how to stay sustainable. That's why we are working with artists to showcase with their eyes the current situation, where we are heading, and what can we do about it.
Yes, I think, thank you, Ivona. I think you both put in the spotlight the local level and how municipalities, local governments can actually be sometimes way more active and at the forefront of change or maintaining a momentum, a political momentum, when sometimes the national governments are more stuck, less active, more polarizing in their conversation, and sometimes lack the vision or the long-term commitments that sometimes these matters need at international level for sure. Maybe to go back to Jordi on this aspect of involvement of the cities and how the cities can or are at the forefront of this conversation. You were mentioning the very different indicators that some of them are using already. You were also mentioning in a way, the how forward-looking some cities are, and probably the the central role that the cities and local governments actually um, 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 put culture. I mean, the culture is not questioned in a way. Its role, importance, and impact is not questioned, which might be a very different conversation at national level sometimes. But can you tell us if this resonates with your experience in the committee and how you see this evolving?
I will try. It's a difficult question, but I will try. I would say that um, local governments cannot avoid the celebration of life. Let's put it this way. Because seasons happen, cities and places have a day of birth, and heritage exists even in new cities like Brasilia or Naipidao or Sejong, and governments and civil society like to root people. People need this root. People need doing something together with neighbors. Of course, we can discuss philosophically, but I think that this is a reality for the majority of people. Second, this we have the scientific evidence now that the participation in civic processes goes hand in hand with participation in cultural activities and participation in democracy and also good health. So we have the evidences that, yeah, now scientific, but it was quite obvious for many places and actors that this goes hand in hand. The national governments may feel uncomfortable with this, say, transversal approach of culture that say connects cultural production with public spaces, with inclusion. Sometimes because of the fact that let me be a bit bold here, the priorities of the cultural sector are very endogenous, and national organizations, ministries, bodies are shaped to give an answer to those and not to other demands, demands of other groups in society. So perhaps this is yeah, this could be my answer. But again, the challenge in the achievement of a knowledgeable conversation at a global level relies in national governments. We cannot be tired of advocating to national governments this year and in 2027 that now it is the time for them to move. If they want to preserve the vibrancy, the national cultural institutions, organizations, the presence of these organizations in the discussion about democracy, rights, and development, now it is the time to go for a culture goal and to defend this culture goal in the high-level political forum, in the Summit of the Future in September 2027. Now it is the time. Cities and local governments can do a little bit more, but it is already gained. This is already gained. It could be a consolation prize that nations would say, oh no, this is the cities. No, it's not the cities. We need national governments to set the culture goal internally, to fund cultural organizations, to protect the cultural professionals, to increase mobility, to increase discussion on peace and solidarity. The world is going in another direction, but we need to insist that nations have the responsibility in this debate. So we need to push them to say to join this conversation openly.
Yes, thank you, Georgie. It feels also that, but this is a thought or a question I would like to ask all of you, actually. It feels today's the multiplication of crisis and the multiplication of conflicts, and from Ukraine, what's happening these days in Iran and in Sudan, etc. I mean, we have many conflicts and wars and emergencies or urgencies. I have worked this past year quite a lot on the issues and the situation of artists and arts professionals at risk or displaced, and I can see that even if we have an international situation or conversation at national level that are shifting away from a lot of the cultural, the values that we defend in the arts and culture field. At the same time, there is a strong interest to try to defend arts and culture at the moment. And we see that, I can see that in many countries, because of the climate and the international environment we are evolving, navigating these days, there is a general feeling of urgency also to be able to propose frames or to secure some action framework to support or maintain or protect not only artists and cultural workers, but also arts and culture in general, intangible heritage. So it is a weird moment where we feel the world is spinning on its head, and at the same time, many institutions have a clear understanding that we need to act very quickly and try to be clever or to be smart in our political moves. When you were presenting the situation, you were mentioning that this the cultural goal was an idea that was defended by many, let's say, global South countries, to put it, again, caricaturally. And I'm wondering if these, my comment here resonates with what you observe yourself. This world being, shifting away from our what we feel is important, but also trying to act and protect this kind of balance act, and how the global south is maybe showing a way or a direction that is making many interesting progresses. Or, I don't know, Rosa, I see your hand. Maybe we start with you.
Well, actually, I just want to continue a bit on what Jordi said about that this is the time that governments should take a stand, and of course, it's something which has to be done if we want to go go on with the culture goal. The official stand of the Finnish government is that that Finland has committed to the SDG goals, and the most important message is that we must do everything to meet the SDG goals we already have. And of course, at this point, when you look at the world, like Johan, you described how the world is like right now. It's like a meme cat in in front in the picture, and all the chaos and catastrophes and fires in the background. But of course, at some point, even those countries who are now committed to the SDG goals, who are pushing forward the multilateral system, where we have these common goals and agreements and declarations and international law, that those forces could be ready also to take the culture goal in. And I've been doing my best in Finland. Then when Finland is going to have a stand, what's going to happen after 2030, that they that we have all the possible documents there can be, with saying that the culture goal is a goal, but we don't have really yet the kind of the foreign policy stand. But for example, our president has said in the national TV that culture goal sounds good. So it's kind of it's not something that nobody's not talking about. It's happening, but there's not so much light and hope in the world right now, and it's possible that it doesn't. The whole SDG concept will collapse, but still, it's possible that we can use culture as a driving element, and we can be relevant and important to save the future for our children. And I I thank you so much, Jordi, about your perseverance with this, because all the big changes are something we have to do such a long time. And the Culture Action Europe has been doing right things with all the mainstreaming, but also with this sustainable development concept. Because I asked that what else is more important in the world, really? But when we are not middle-aged anymore, when we are old, like what we actually do say to our grandchildren, that what we did, we can say, well, we did this. So I'm just kind of let's continue, and we can do it.
Well, let's continue the fight. Ivona, you wanted
like
to...
eternal battle.
Yes.
Yes, I'm thinking what we need to continue the fight. We just had a so-called Stockholm Lab gathering, well, not politicians, but decision makers and culture sector around the subject of sustainability, 2030 environmental goals and so on, 2030 agenda. And what we could realize is that the leaders don't understand that we cannot build the future without imagination, the future we cannot imagine. Sweden is a leader of sustainability research, and culture still remains on the margin of development politics. So we need competence. We need competence to deliver competence to the decision makers and politicians, policy makers, to recognize culture as a part of this development, as a strategic resource for security, health, climate actions. I think that politicians have troubles with implementing the agenda, the goals, like goal 12, goal 13 with climate actions. They are often like people are a little bit silent about how to implement those goals, if not on the very local levels, the levels of NGOs. Politics are not on that level. And I think that we will not reach the goal of putting the culture as a missing pillar in the 2030 agenda without more competence development of different politicians, not only cultural, but even politicians in other areas of politics.
Thank you. Yes, capacity building and strengthening our, our environment, because of course the politicians, but I always feel, and this is why School of Advocacy is such a brilliant title for this series of conversation. We need also ourselves to build our own capacities, and the cultural workers need to build their own capacities to be able to act or to lobby, to advocate, to explain to decision makers the why and how it is important. Lars.
Yeah, thank you. I want to directly build on what Ivona said, because I'm so happy to hear that last thought also about where we target our advocacy and what we meet in certain persons in missing competencies maybe. But let me start quickly again. It's my professional deformation that I just look at the EU all the time. But we just had the launch, or just in November, we had the launch of the Culture Compass by the European Commission, which will be the guiding strategy of the European Commission when it comes to culture for the coming mandate, political mandate. To our positive surprise, there was a guiding principle on the first page, which they called roughly the EU for culture, or culture for the EU, or Europe for culture, culture for Europe. And in a way, with a little bit of optimistic reading of that language, I can see that there is a notion that we need a standalone goal, so to speak, that we look on a European level, because it's not only that culture contributes to all the transformations that Europe needs to go through, the mainstreaming thought, but also that Europe needs to reinforce the cultural sector. But then the question for me is, what does that mean? And then I think we get to the idea that we need to look at not the values, but the role and the position of culture in our societies, in our political discussions, and how we position them as a common good, maybe, which is not happening in the still neoliberal, anything goes sort of political atmosphere, which is maybe more the direction of thinking of Justin O'Connor, that kind of calls us to position culture as part of a foundational economy. But then, first of all, we need to recognize that there is something like a foundational economy where, I don't know, culture, healthcare, education are things that we need to offer to each society. And then there's the democratic right, and I think also that's what Ivona said, no, that need for imagining better futures, that power of imagination that we need in order to kind of empower me as a citizen to make informed decisions and think critically, and also put myself forward to be elected upon, not only put a thumbs up or a heart or something here and there, but really be in a discursive action. That's what imagination empowers me to do, and that solely comes from the cultural sector. And then, yes, there's the third part, and that's the transformative power. And then, yes, we contribute to health. Yes, we contribute to greening. Yes, we contribute to all kind of things. But I think it's only in that kind of triangle that we can position it. And then we somehow get beyond our data obsession somehow. I mean, another part of the compass document of the EU that I liked is that they want to establish a data hub which suggests to me that they want to bring together all the resources that are there, because we have all the data. But it's like, we are like, I don't know, standing on a wall and shouting into a void. I mean, we have all the data, and other people, other sectors, and I mean, I could name a lot of them who don't have the data, but the better story. Get what they want, and we are kind of we are shouting into a black box and don't get a response. So in a way, I also think looking at ourselves, how we maybe can educate ourselves or our own competencies as advocates or lobbyists or however we want to call ourselves, is maybe to look away from, not look away, but broaden our perspective from policy making and data-driven argumentations more to a political scope and look at politicians, really. And that's why I want to build up on what Ivana just ended her plea with, to see that we need a political narrative and a political will in the center of power. Again, in the EU, like we were used to, I don't know, advocate strongly the Commissioner for Culture because they would never react to what we said. We would advocate strongly the Parliament because they would never react to what we said. The Council would. They're all on our side now. There's a great commissioner, it's on our side. There's a great chair of the Cult Committee, it's on our side. So we are all of a sudden sitting at the same side of the table, and we still act as if we would sit on the other side of the table. So I think the conversation we need to lead with the policymakers that understand what we are doing or why we are doing it is probably rather that we need to understand, like, how can we together get to the center of where, in Europe it's either, what is it, competitiveness, security, and democracy. Those are the three issues. And in none of these aspects, culture is there. Nowhere. Draghi report, no culture. I don't know. You can carry on like that. State of the Union speech of Ursula von der Leyen twice a year. We are glued to the screen. Will she mention culture? No, it's always agriculture. So if this compass of the EU, and it's just a passport to the EU, I'm not focused, I'm not limited to the EU. If this compass of the EU is to be taken serious by more than just us, but the question to me is how either we change our language or our approach to reach the center of decision making, or indeed we explore further what Ivona proposed, that we build competencies on the politician side, but then we need to target different people, I'm afraid. Or not, I'm afraid, it's just, the battle cry to target different people.
Yes, Lars. It's very interesting. Thank you for your input. I think, it is an interesting, state of the art or state of culture also that you published, and I think it fueled a lot of our thoughts in the field, and what Elena Politseva has put together with you and many others. And several key documents coming from the field, analyzing in a way where we are, where we were, and what needs to be achieved. And this is also, it's in a way going back to the beginning of the conversation with Georgie, when we try to measure what needs to be done, it feels like the journey is immense and the mountain to climb is very high. And at the same time, as you said, we have so many allies now and so many people that are very aware of our battles, and in a way are sharing a lot, not only the values but also the process of or the end goal, where we need to go. And I like the idea of training in a way the public, but the politicians. I'm not sure they are easily trainable. We need to go to their schools, to their business schools and economic schools and etc. We need to go to those places, those fortresses where they kind of fabric and shape the elite of tomorrow, including the politician elite. And sometimes I remember a conversation I had many, many years ago with American colleagues, where several key foundations in America, very rich ones, came together and supported a research process in 10 different US states to see why arts and culture were not high in everybody's agenda. Citizens, consumers, politicians, etc. And they were trying to see what kind of campaign it would take to actually raise the bar, to actually put a mainstream arts and culture in these different states. And they came with a very, American, no offense, dry conclusion that we needed PR and marketing. So the wording that you were mentioning, work on words, on vocabulary, on image, on everything, like we need PR and marketing. And I think we are all kind of reluctant to go in that direction. I don't know. And we probably don't have the money to do that either. I don't know. Ivona, yes.
I don't know if we still have time, but yeah. I am thinking about this, Academy for Politicians is one very tangible suggestion, but I'm thinking about something else, that is that the world sees the European Union, and our politicians see a map of borders. And in some way, we must give the European body more strength by making culture stronger, not just a national afterthought. I am observing different European countries in our transnational European projects, and culture has a very different value, a very different status, depending on the country we are collaborating with. So in some countries, it's really recognized as a strong power. Getting financial funds for continuation, for even stronger actions. In some countries, it's totally different. So, and I don't have any analysis why is that, but I think that it's really interesting to take a closer look on that, not only from the perspective that suddenly, I don't know, UK or Italy is giving more money to culture on Poland and the others are downsizing the budget, but also why. Why are some countries giving more, and do they possibly imagine the power of culture in a different way than the others? Well, and there is also this aspect, I mean, of the war on the other side of the border of the European Union. We are speaking in the Nordics about the preparedness for crisis, the krisberedskap in Swedish. In my view, and many others, of course, collaborating with me, a common European space, a common European cultural space is a soft security asset that makes you more resilient against disinformation and fragmentation. And these are the arguments which I think bite. That is what we have on the agenda just now. That's what we are talking about. The AI is international. The disinformation is international. So we need a supranational power to fight against a supranational forces which are destroying our society.
Thank you, thank you. Before giving you the floor, Rosa, I see a comment posted by Niels. So maybe it's time also to invite our participants and attendees to raise their hand and take the floor in a minute. I will give you the floor right after Rosa. So Rosa, yes.
Actually, we have the training courses on culture, arts and heritage, cultural politics for politicians in Finland. We've been have them for years uh, by Finnish Culture Foundation. When I was a young politician, I've been I've been in that course. So it's a long tradition we have. And lately, within few years, also we've managed to get the culture into the national defense courses, which is kind of a very this Finland is so militarized society because of our long border. So basically, every politician and also the business elite goes to the national defense course, and we have the culture in the course program. So that kind of thing, I think it's going on well. But we, anyway, we have to do the mainstreaming all the time because there are so like I remember when I was a politician that the world is vast and there are many things. So it's just like kind of those things you are not reminded every now and then, just kind of a drop off from the to-do list. And that is the reason why we have to be active all the time to contact also those politicians who are going to be next in the power and the future leaders. And I really have to say that I can see sometimes that Lars, you are exhausted and frustrated, but it's because you are doing so wonderful work. You are strategic, and you've been doing right choices when doing mainstreaming. And I think this sustainable development is an important context for us. And we just have to do it and do it, do it and do it. It's the same when you are loving something else. I have a background in other fields.
Yes, we need to continue. Thank you, Rosa. I see that Niels posted a comment. I don't know, Niels, if you want to quickly take the floor actually and share your thought and elaborate a little bit on your comment.
Hello, everyone. I can do that. And thank you for a very thoughtful, open reflection. My comment is very much about, I do believe actually on a local and regional level that we see, at least in the Nordics, a much higher recognition of the role, the value that culture plays, both in the formation of societal design, through the transversal effects, different kinds of collaborations. We see it as settlement policy, we see it as development policy, we see it as investment policy. And for a small country like Denmark, the director of Danish Culture, which is an umbrella organization, could go to the Royal New Year banquet with the notion that we had just sold in actual ticket transactions more than 70 million tickets in Denmark 2025, which is underpinning the fact that 8 out of 10 Danes visit culture, uses culture at least once a month. And that has to do about distribution of resources, that has to do about creating an infrastructure where culture is there, that has to do about access to culture, that has to do about the implementation of the UNESCO Convention. And when that happens, when that is kind of massaged into the unarticulated infrastructure of development, it suddenly becomes articulated. Suddenly there is an attention. If so many of a constituency of their elector base has an interest in culture, has an interest in dialogue, invest time in different communities, position themselves, then suddenly culture becomes enormously important. So what we are seeing now is a completely different cultural discourse on a local and a regional level. And it's slowly kind of sipping into the national level that municipalities and regions and local actors play a significantly higher role in the formation of the citizens' everyday life, where culture has a very, very central place. And of course, we can have all kinds of thoughts about this. Is this because of the crisis? Is this because whenever there's a crisis, people tend to creep more together? But when I visit, we are working in Ireland at the moment. We have been doing things with Malta. It's the same kind of narratives. The infrastructure might look different, the political priorities might look different, but the need and the intention and the movement seems to be something that we actually share across Europe. And I think that's interesting, because then that's about the political, how we frame the political design and how we make sure that culture can anchor inside the political framework. And on a European level, as Lars brilliantly put it, it's absent. It's simply not there. All other kinds of political attention areas are there, but culture seems to be, even though they are on the same side of the table, it's still, in terms of how it's actually being concretely framed, it's not really there. And I think that's the trick. And I'm sure we have to get together as a sector, but we might also have to align with other societal and social sectors, I think, in the formation of democracy. I think democracy is actually the combining word here. The culture plays an enormous role in the open, transparent, liberal democracies that we celebrate in Europe.
Thank you, Niels, for your contribution. And I see Ivana's comment on the Nordic action plan. Maybe you want to share a little bit more, Ivana.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. So yeah, but my comment just derives from that. As we probably know, the Vision 2030 in the Nordic region, which was created by the Nordic Council of Ministers, is already implementing culture as a part of of the politics. So this is just an example that it's possible to elevate culture from the more, I don't know, national level to the at least trans-regional level, as the Nordics is the macro region, we also at Culture Action Europe, at the European level, we are speaking about the nations, not the regions. Maybe the regions are more powerful and more knowledgeable and more free to implement that kind of politics, which politics which we are all interested in. And as for the support of the sector, I think that the initiatives as the Nordic Hub, Culture Action Europe created that kind of hubs in different constellations in Europe, and we are the Nordic Hub. Intercult is representing the Nordic Hub, and I think that those advocacy campaigns which we can make now in our regions are immensely important. And what is coming now is this political convent in Sweden. It's in February, People and Culture, Folk and Kultur, where all the Swedish politicians are present. And I must admit that I had some troubles to find people in Sweden who know anything about the compass, except of ourselves at Intercult. And of course the Arts Council, but otherwise the knowledge about the compass is and the suggested actions in the compass is quite low in Sweden. So national doesn't work. Just speaking quite strictly, regional works better. The organizational, like driven by organizations like Culture Action Europe or similar organizations in Sweden works. How to combine those perspectives to elevate this try to put culture in the heart of the European policies. I don't know, but I think that there are good examples in the Nordics that already managed to do it, and maybe we can take a closer look at it.
Thank you, Ivana. Thank you for this also, these suggestions. I'm just checking our participants if anybody has a digital hand raised or posted comments. Don't hesitate if you want to take the floor and share a comment or a question. I will maybe just reflect a little bit on these last comments. It feels like we are moving from a school of advocacy to a school of politicians. You know, we are going in that directions. We try to be more focused in terms of the targets we want to to reach out to and to train to be better politicians, maybe. And what's good is we have existing examples of fora where these kind of these ideas have been already implemented and tested and has been existing. So it's also very inspiring to hear from both Ivona and Rosa on this. It feels also that the data hub is still quite needed. I mean, this idea of aggregating the existing data and information and making sure this information is available and can be accessible to shape messages, but also to be able to connect and articulate efforts with other fields and sectors, because this is one of the other things that comes out from the conversation is the idea to maybe act more transversally in society and connect with other fields where there is an alignment of values and principles. And this is something we've talked about also quite a lot in the arts and culture for many years. And there are some obvious fields that we are very close to, but sometimes we maybe need to, I mean, maybe this is an exercise we need to do collectively to rethink our, who we reach out to, who we feel close to, and why, and maybe build new relationship with other socioeconomic sectors in order to defend this triangle you were mentioning last earlier. And I hear clearly that the region and cities are key players in advancing progress and to strengthen the role or the position of arts and culture in society. And they are anchors and contacts that we need to nourish in a way to continue our work, our advocacy work. Do you have last thoughts or things that you want to carry today from this conversation? I'm asking the four of you, what is something that you want to bring back home after this? Yes, Rosa.
I think whenever we try to become a professional lobbyist, to do advocacy as a professional, we have to learn the political processes, and we have to know the politicians. And so it's kind of it's not about only like a teaching to politicians what's in the fields of culture, but we have to learn the debate, what's going on there, what's on the agenda, what kind of concepts they use, what kind of debates they have, what are the processes, and that's what I think the Cultural Action Europe is doing the right thing in the processes, in the framework of where the politics is happening. And also the same is when we are talking about sustainable development. It's also the creative shifts document I put to the chat, that one conclusion there is that we in the cultural field, if we want to be relevant in the field of sustainable development, we have to learn to use their concepts. So if we want to promote the culture goal, we have to understand the whole framework, the other SDG goals, and the debate what's going on there. So we can't have our own debate if we want to be relevant. We have to be in the debate and listen and understand the others and learn to speak the language. So I think I've I still have a lot of things to do, even though I've been in the like I've been also an environmental activist from my very early years. So, and still I think I have to learn all the time the whole sustainable development, new wins.
Thank you, Rosa. Yes, Lars, do you want to share some takeaways?
Yes, thank you. No, I first of all want to also thank you to the Nordic Hub for organizing this event, and Johan, really the way you frame and bring back the discussions is really pleasant. I really enjoy this, and I've learned a lot, and I think what Rosa also said, we have to learn, is something that resonates with me and that I will take with me. I think looking at the models that you've shared, also what Niels has brought in, and what Ivona has brought in about how on a very regional and local level the global challenges are addressed, are really inspiring and kind of get me out of my limited view of this EU struggle. So thank you for that. And I wanted to, just as a positive outlook as well, how that learning can concretely look like, connect to something that Johan said about, maybe we need to forge new alliances or broaden our perspective and see in which other areas we need to enter a new space and see how we can be part of a conversation. And in a way, we've been pushed towards that by, for instance, how in the proposal for the new MFF for the next budget period of the EU, the Creative Europe program has been put into the Agora EU framework, where we, between inverted commas, are all of a sudden together in the game with journalists and media. Okay, we've already been with media in the old program, which is a weird thing anyway, that we have let ourselves be divided in the past already. But now there are journalists and there's civil society, and civil society organizations are very broad, from environmental to, I don't know, healthcare, whatever sort of educational institutions. And the journalists are, of course, the ones that, at the moment alone battle misinformation and all these aspects that have been mentioned when it comes to security concepts as well, for instance. So we all of a sudden sit together with them and try to see how do we bring back, synergize our advocacies for a better position in the budget? It's all about money, but how can we make sure that we don't argue against each other and divide each other? Because in the current framework, we need to stand together and make sure that the whole amount gets bigger and that we use it in a way that makes sense to us. And that is a big challenge, because some things that are important for us are rather threatening to, I don't know, the audiovisual sectors. Other aspects that are important for journalists are rather threatening to some civil society organizations and so on. But I think we are all convinced of the value that we need to explore that joint space of conversation. And I am confident that we will get there, because there is will. And where there is will, there is a pathway forward. And that, with that positive note, I end here. And
yes,
thank you again.
Thank you for this positive note. I'm turning towards Georgie. Do you want to share a quick takeaway?
Very quick, extraordinary, rich conversation. I learned a lot. Thank you very much, Lars, Rosa, Ivona, Johan. Great work. And perhaps let me just affirm there will be a post 2030 something, and we it's not likely a human rights based agenda. That's not likely. The 2030 agenda is not already a human rights based agenda, so it will not be perfect. But we have the duty and the responsibility to make it as strong, as shared, as possible. The cultural actors, we are here to give light, to give solid basis, scientific, to this connection between human life, celebration of life, solidarity, creativity, imagination, and we have to insist. Thank you.
Well, we continue to insist. Thank you, Jordi. And Ivona, do you have a last thought you want to share with us? You are muted. Sorry.
Sorry again. Yes, of course. I think that somebody mentioned the data and using data, and think that data can prove culture's impact, but only political will, which we were speaking about today, can make it structural. From my local point of view and also international, I would say that let's stop asking for permission for culture to exist and start or continue to use it to transform the society, which we are doing on everyday basis. Because together with people like Jordi, like Lars, working at that global level, and me, Rosa, and other, we are pushing for a fundamental shift in how the EU and the world approach sustainability by adding culture to the definition. So to all people watching us today, I would like to say that join us in making culture the heartbeat of the European project. Join us as we work to make culture a standalone goal for a better, more resilient Europe and world.
Thank you very much, Ivona, for these takeaways. I think it's a wonderful conclusion for our webinar or our conversation today. We are right on time. I want to thank Rosa, you, Ivona, Jordi, Lars, of course, but I want also to thank Burak for organizing and posting a lot of links and sharing resources. This conversation has been recorded and will be available on Culture Action YouTube channel and website. And of course, you can always subscribe to Culture Action Europe newsletter to receive more invitations to contribute to our lively debates. Thank you. This is all for today. Have a good day. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye.